You didn't realize something was wrong until you were already apologizing. Not for something you did, for something you felt. That's usually how it starts, not with a red flag, but with a small confusion. You walk away from a conversation feeling like you said the wrong thing, but you can't quite name what it was. You replay it, you adjust your tone for next time, and somehow that adjustment is exactly what they needed from you. Manipulators don't announce themselves. That's not a mistake, it's the design. The ones who do the most damage don't look like villains. They look like the person who always checks in on you first, the one who remembers small details, who says the right thing at the right moment, who makes you feel early on like you finally found someone who gets it. That feeling is real. It's just not the whole picture. What you're experiencing is called mirroring, and it's not always conscious. Some people do it instinctively because closeness is useful to them. They study what you need and hand it back to you, polished. You feel seen, what you're actually feeling is targeted. The confusion comes later when the version of them you trusted starts to shift. Suddenly at first, a comment that stings but gets wrapped in a joke. A plan that changes at the last minute, but you feel bad for being frustrated. A moment where you're clearly upset and somehow you end up comforting them. You file these away as isolated moments, moods, stress, off days. What you don't see yet is that these moments have a pattern, not chaos, architecture. Every time you pull back slightly, they intensify the warmth. Every time you get close to naming the problem, the subject shifts. Every time you feel confused, you're told, directly or not, that you're too sensitive. Emotional manipulation doesn't feel like force. It feels like weather, like something that just happens around you, not to you. You adjust your behavior to avoid the cold fronts. You start self-editing before you even speak. You think twice before expressing a need because you know how it might land. That internal hesitation, that pause before you say what you actually think, that's not you being careful. That's you being trained. One of the clearest signs is what happens when you try to hold a boundary. Not an aggressive one, just a quiet, "I'm not comfortable with that." In a healthy dynamic, that gets acknowledged, maybe discussed, maybe adjusted. With a manipulator, it gets managed. They don't fight the boundary directly. They make the boundary feel like a problem, like your discomfort is an inconvenience they're graciously tolerating. Like the real issue is your inability to relax, trust, or let things go. And because you're someone who values self-awareness, you consider it. Maybe I am overreacting. Maybe I do make everything harder than it needs to be. That self-doubt is exactly where they need you to stay. The other thing that makes this hard to see is the inconsistency. They're not always like this. That's not an excuse, it's the mechanism. The good moments aren't accidents. They're maintenance. Just enough warmth to keep you from leaving, just enough distance to keep you uncertain. You start organizing your behavior around their moods without realizing you're doing it. You track their tone the moment they walk in. You read the room before you speak. You become very good at anticipating, and that skill has a cost. It quietly shifts your nervous system into a permanent low-level alert. Not panic, just a background hum. A readiness that never fully switches off. You sleep fine, you function, but something underneath stays slightly braced. Here's what most people get wrong about manipulation. They think it's about control. It is, but not the kind that looks like control. It's about managing your perception of them and your perception of yourself. A skilled manipulator doesn't need you to obey. They need you to doubt your memory of what happened. Doubt the legitimacy of your reaction. Doubt whether the problem is them or just the way you process things. Once that doubt is planted, you become your own obstacle. You do the work of keeping yourself small so they don't have to. The loneliness inside this is specific. It's not the loneliness of being alone. It's the loneliness of being with someone and still feeling unseen. Of performing okayness while something underneath quietly accumulates. Of having no clean language for what's happening so you say nothing, because when you try to explain it to someone else, it sounds small. They made a comment. They forgot something important. They turned it around. The pattern doesn't make it into the sentence. And because it sounds small, you start to believe it is small. That's the trap. Not any single moment, but the slow accumulation of small ones. The way your confidence shrinks over months. The way you stop trusting your own reactions. The way you become easier to manage without anyone having to try very hard. You might not even be angry. You might just feel tired in a way you can't explain. Tired of conversations that leave you more confused than before they started. Tired of being the one who apologizes first, who checks in more, who tries harder. Tired of the version of yourself you've become inside this dynamic. What pulls people out isn't usually a dramatic confrontation. It's a moment of clarity, quiet, sometimes accidental. A conversation with someone who responds to your needs without making you feel guilty. A moment where you express something difficult and the other person just receives it, and you realize you've forgotten that's possible. That contrast does something. It doesn't fix everything immediately, but it shows you concretely what's been missing and what you've been compensating for. Recovery from this kind of dynamic isn't just about leaving. It's about relearning how to trust your own reading of a room, how to feel something and not immediately interrogate whether you're allowed to feel it, how to hold a boundary without bracing for punishment. That takes time. It takes patience with yourself, not performance of healing. If any of this is landing close to something real in your life right now, this script is meant for reflection and recognition, not as a substitute for professional support. A therapist, counselor, or trusted person who knows your situation can offer what this can't. What manipulation ultimately relies on is your willingness to believe the problem is you. The moment you stop doing that work for them, the whole architecture starts to show.